Hi, I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avasec Communications and host of StrategyCast. Join me and my guests, innovators, disruptors, and visionaries, as we explore bold and brave marketing strategies that help you transform, scale, and grow your brand. How do you scale and grow a brand toward IPO success? Chad Sollis, CMO of digital accessibility leader AudioEye, knows the playbook. With 25 years of experience growing brands like Adobe and Traeger, Chad shows his approach to scalability, accessibility, and conversion-driven marketing. In this episode, we break down how you can truly understand your audience, extract real customer insights, and execute multi-channel strategies that drive growth. If you're serious about leveling up your marketing, don't miss this conversation. Let's get started.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to StrategyCast. I'm absolutely thrilled today to have Chad Sollis join the show. Welcome.
Hi, welcome, or not welcome. Thank you for having me.
Well, you can say welcome anytime you want. I love that. I'm really, really excited about today's topic. Chad is going to give us a playbook on scalability, accessibility, and conversion-driven campaigns that is really going to knock your socks off. Really excited to dive into it. Before we get there, Chad, would you please tell us a little bit about your current position and the journey that got you there?
You bet. You bet. So I am the Chief Marketing Officer for a company called AudioEye, who is a digital accessibility company. I've been doing marketing, both leading and tactical execution for almost 25 years. I have been in marketing, product, and technology roles for companies growing from 30 million to up to $3 billion in revenue. A lot of those companies scaling at over 100% CAGRs, and doing that across multiple industries: B2B SaaS, ed tech, CPG, consumer electronics, e-commerce. And I've actually had the fortune and blessing to see 4 of those companies through IPOs.
Great.
So it's just crazy growth. So companies like internationally known, like Adobe, Traeger, Vivint.
Domo. Yeah.
What's that?
Domo.
Yeah.
And by the way,
So
we're a Vivint customer.
you are.
We are. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I
Yeah.
know.
So did someone knock on your door, or did you see a
So
commercial and call in?
this is really interesting. And there's another, as my priest would say, there's a great homily in that question, but there's actually a great show in that question about, referral versus advertising and how it all works together.
Yeah.
But I tell you quickly, it was during COVID because we weren't in the office as much. And there was one gal that came in every day, and I was worried about her safety being here alone. So that's why I got the security system. And so we've been customers since 2020. And quite frankly, a gentleman walked by the office and gave us a flyer. And I researched online, called, and we were installed within 2 weeks. So that's how it happened.
That is awesome. Yeah, my team and a partner in the sales side, his name was Josh Hauser. We built the inside sales and digital marketing program at Vivint, which was fun. Yeah.
So incredible brands. I mean, Traeger, Adobe, Domo, Vivint, as we've talked about. What is it that interested you so much in moving to a company? Obviously, AudioEye has, an incredible foothold on the market. But those are big, big brands. You've talked about IPOs, you've talked about growth strategies. What is it that really interested you about leaving some of that behind and really developing the growth strategy for a younger company?
Yeah. So, it started. So in the long history of the big brands, what I found interesting is the first time that I came across digital accessibility was at Traeger. And Traeger wasn't that long ago. It was 4 or 5 years ago. And so 20 years, I had never come across digital accessibility with major brands. And then we were hit with a problem at Traeger that we had to solve and brought digital accessibility to mind. And then uh, it's become part of my playbook as a digital marketer since, and a product leader ever since, because what's interesting about it is 25% of all internet traffic is believed to come from people that are experiencing some form of disability, whether that's auditory, visual, neurodivergent. They're experiencing something, and that impacts how they experience your website, your product, your app, even down to the PDFs if you're like a healthcare provider. And so, yeah, this opportunity came by, I was really intrigued because it's a category I feel is actually really underserved, because most people buy it when they need it and
Right.
not ahead of time. And I felt like it was an area I could grow.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into is your playbook on how you've grown the AudioEye and other brands in the marketplace. And this seems like a real basic, but I think this is where most campaigns go wrong. And that is really understanding the audience and defining the success around the non-negotiables about what they need day in and day out. And although we know the importance around that, many, many marketers are still getting that wrong. What's the key to truly understanding your audience in a way that is going to drive the results that the C-suite expects and, quite frankly, you and I want to be achieving?
Yeah. So the thing I think most marketers, product folks are a little better at this, but they still, I think, have some significant gaps. But marketers aren't doing it enough. You actually need to talk to the customers. You know, the personas where you put them on a poster in the office and you have like Alex and Jane, and this is Alex the marketer and Jane the UX professional. Those kinds of personas don't help you identify and talk to the right person. You actually need to it's not their demographic information, it's not even their firmographic information. What you need to understand is their behavior,
Emotion.
uh, the emotion, the behavior, and if that's ultimately represented with a poster in the office, fine, but you actually have to talk to them. Um, and then you include them in your process. You actually include them in your campaign development. You include them in your product design, and you let them give feedback early in those stages so that when you go to the masses, you actually know it's going to have a positive reaction. And
Right.
then, of course, the part you have to do, because what people tell you is not always what they'll actually do. You need to observe them digitally and actually test behavior and see if they're responding the way they said they would, and then button down the entire strategy.
So, how do you observe customers digitally?
Yeah. So what you discover from talking to them, you then take a subset of that and deploy it to your website, deploy it in ads to a smaller segment, call it 20% of a segment, and see if they respond how they said they would respond. And if not, then tweak and adjust a little bit and then see if they respond again. And then you start getting this kind of comprehensive performance that you say, okay, now I can take that out to the masses. So a lot of brands, when they're considering messaging and positioning and things like that matter in a campaign, they focus on what they want to say
Right.
more so than how someone will receive that information. And
Right.
so they missed the step of actually testing it in a small group before it goes out to the masses.
That's great. Now, in these situations, there's surveys, there's one-on-one conversations, there's stakeholder interviews, there's focus groups, all sorts of things. And how important is being statistically relevant versus just gaining great insights?
Yeah. So I think qualitative insight is more important than quantitative when you're getting to this level in understanding the audience. Quantitative is important because quantitative I look at is when you're defining the broader segment, like what are the segments we need to target? What is our TAM essentially so that this campaign will be effective? But when you're actually getting down to, what is the messaging we're using? What is the theme? The qualitative pieces where that becomes really powerful.
Yeah. Do you have an example of any of the brands, any of the campaigns that you've worked on that you found out something really interesting, an aha moment for you that really caused a juxtaposition in your go-to market strategy or messaging or tactical
Yeah. There's a couple, one quick one I love to share because it just articulates the point. And it was when I was in a product capacity at Traeger, we had built this, what we thought was a brilliant strategy and my team was responsible for the mobile app and the digital cooking experience. And so we had this vision. It was going to be amazing. And then part of our process, we'd gone a little too far before this, but we still did it, is we flew out. We scheduled about 30 different interviews all over the country, different geographies, so that we got kind of a different demographic in each of those segments. And then we actually sat and we cooked with them from the app, and we watched their what's that?
Cool. That is
Yeah.
really
And we observed them and watched what they did. We didn't interact. We didn't say, why did you do that? We just watched them, and all the way from prep to plating and serving their guests. And what we found was this, and it was we saw this almost immediately, was everything we had planned in this strategy was basically not how these people wanted to cook and how they wanted to experience food with their guests.
yeah.
And so we went back to the drawing table, rebuilt the strategy, and that's ultimately what we ended up delivering and going live with. But it completely pivoted the entire experience by just talking to our customers. Now, if we had just surveyed them, which is how we actually started the strategy, was with the survey, it actually directed us a different way, because what people tell you in a survey is different than what they will tell you in a focus group, which is different than what they'll actually do when they think no one's
Right.
watching.
So the key here is finding out what they actually do. And audience, I would think through that. This is great. These 3 steps right here are the secret sauce. I do believe starting out with a survey obviously leads to incredible qualitative information that then we need to take to the next level and really quantify based on human interaction, human impact, human insights. And I think that's brilliant. And I would assume that there were a few drinks along the way with those Traeger cook-offs as well, right?
Yeah, we want to make sure they have a good time.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. So, basic here is absolutely gaining those customer insights. Why do you think so many, even well-schooled marketers, don't provide the time or don't really build in the time needed to gain the insight from the customer to really be successful?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, in the modern marketing environment, and actually, this isn't necessarily even a modern problem. Marketers have always been under the gun for delivery of results, for
Right.
performance, for new revenue. And CEOs are frequently impatient and want those results now. They want the quarter numbers, especially if that company is public or has venture capital reports that they have to meet. And so I think a lot of it is just the pressure of the situation. And in the modern environment as well, the buying experience is happening. I think the last statistic I read was 87% of a buyer's journey is happening before they even interact with your brand.
Wow.
And that's what that means for marketers is you have to do a lot of work before you're actually capturing that lead or capturing that transaction. And all of that work is happening, 80% of that is happening in what's deemed dark social or where it's very difficult to track. And the last 20 years of marketing, you've been able to track everything.
Right.
And now, call it the last 5 to 7 years, it's very difficult to track a lot of those interactions, but they're critical to the buyer's journey.
Do you think there's a difference in earlier stage companies versus later stage or established regarding the effort put into understanding the customer?
I think more established companies are going to know that they're going to have more data at their disposal. They're going to have more resources to know their customer more intimately. But I do think a startup or an earlier stage, there's also a little bit of room there to define the audience because uh, you're growing and adapting and your product might evolve or your SaaS offering might evolve based on segments behavior. And
Right.
again, if you're talking to customers and you're involving your product team in talking to customers, you'll find parallel and tangent areas that you can evolve to, and that will reshape who your buyer is ultimately.
And that I think is really what is uncovered in a traditional problem market fit uh, strategy, where you're really trying to understand, here's the ideal um, customer, here's the product, and then how are they interacting? And what we've seen is a lot of companies skip problem market fit and they go to right to problem or product market fit. And what they've not gained during the product market fit, 6 months, 9 months, year of really interacting with customers and figuring things in and out are exactly those insights that you gain through years of being in market. So I love that, really how you've broken that down, and it is some good advice for our listeners today. You've gained all this insight. Now you're going to go to market. And, we're not only gaining insight on how they interact with a product, but we're gaining insight on what they do with it and ultimately how it's used and the impact that it makes on their life. So if we're talking about multi-channel strategies that are really converting and meeting the goals that are so important, we talk a lot in our own company about right audience, right person, right message, right time, right device. And that ties into a lot of your methodology as well here.
Yes, absolutely.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
so how do you go about making sure that your approach with the multi-channel strategy has all of those elements involved in it?
Yeah, that is a good question. Honestly, it just comes down to the prep work, and some of those pieces are going to be long tail efforts that take a lot of time to gain traction. For example, SEO. SEO, even with the onset of AI, is still a critical part of your strategy. And SEO takes months and years to really get a foothold. Now, for teams that need to operate, that don't have big budgets or need to operate, on a little bit thinner margin, you can start overlapping strategies like AI engine optimization or generative engine optimization with your SEO. And so that you take those tactics and you start working them together so that it doesn't require as much resource as well as you can still have some outstanding results. The other piece, which helps for scale, but also helps you in the multi-channel effort, is a principle that a former colleague and friend of mine, his name is Manuel Reach, he taught me was a principle called atomization. So where you take long form content, like what we're doing today in this podcast, video podcast, and you break that into really small bite-sized pieces, both written and video and audio, and you distribute it in mass across all your platforms. And so you take the transcript of this and turn it into a blog post. You create a Medium article with the transcript and shift it a little bit to make it adapt to that audience. You have the long form on YouTube. You break it up into shorts for YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. And you basically take one piece of content and try and make it 100 pieces of content. That way, it's all still like on theme, on campaign, but you're not recreating the wheel over and over again for all of these different channels.
I love it. We call that like the hub and spoke philosophy, where you've got a single thing. And in this case, yes, it's the podcast. And then you slice it and dice it into many different things and pieces of content that you can use, which is, why I think this form of marketing is so strong for many, many brands. Because number one, it's authentic. We're talking, we're having a discussion. We're providing real live insights to people on how they can succeed. And then we're really amplifying that through guests like you. And then, of course, this slice and dice model. I love it. I am totally in the queue with you on that in a big way. As you know, I want to go back to something that you said just a minute ago regarding generative engine optimization. Explain to our audience a little bit more about what that is and why it's a key. I believe you mentioned it through the SEO process.
Yeah. So GEO, generative engine optimization, it is basically optimizing your content. Well, again, it's all inclusive, video, audio, and written. That generative engines like ChatGPT or Cloud or whatever it is, whatever tool you're using, they are scraping public information to capture data for responses to end user prompts. For a lot of companies, now it depends on your industry and category and solution, but a lot of end users are going to AI before they're going to Google. And even Google is starting to return results, from Gemini above your organic and your paid results. And so a lot of companies are starting to see a pretty significant shift in traffic coming from AI. And so you need to optimize to that. And I actually, I'm not a huge fan of all the hype around AI, but I actually like some of the behaviors that AI is starting to create, meaning you have to get back to some what I would call core marketing principles to perform well in AI. So what I mean by that is AI doesn't take into consideration just SEO work, meaning just blogs and video and articles. They actually look at things like your PR. They look at your placements on major publications. So, like Forbes or Fortune or, big hub houses. They actually weight and understand the broader impact of your brand. And so what that means for marketers is you have to lean into brand marketing. It's not just demand marketing like it's been for the last 20 years. You actually have to build a brand, build awareness, both broadly and specifically with your target market.
Yeah, I love that. And it's great insight. I mean, this show, we did a test on, after you and I record live, about 80% of the process to get these shows out is generative AI deployed. And it's been really interesting in all these tools that we've developed over the last 2-3 years now to help us get these shows to market. And one thing that we were noticing is, there was a lot of hallucination with, for instance, the show notes, and I'd get an intro from my PR team. I'm like, we didn't even talk about this on the show. I have no idea where this information is coming from, or it's not the key point at all. So we've really had to train our tools to, in context is my point.
Yes.
And that is what is really missing in a lot of those tools. And it was painstaking process to get there, but we're finally there. And something that happened along the way where we doubled our podcast downloads because the headlines are so much stronger now regarding SEO optimization that is happening in the market at the time, so that people see the headline and think immediately, okay, I've got to go listen to this. So I love what you've just said, and the proof is in the pudding, and there's an example of how we've really made it work with this show.
That's
Now,
awesome.
yeah, we would be remiss. We've got a few more things that we're going to talk about, but I do want to bring up accessibility as a part of the importance for marketers right now. We believe we've been deploying accessibility. I am very, very active in the intellectual and developmental disability community. So it's something that I've been on high alert with for years and years and years and years. So I would say that our agency,
Thank you.
it's very, very important. And I would say our agency is very forward thinking when it comes to this. We go as far as to, in our master services agreement, if a client refuses to have accessibility, particularly on their website, they have to sign and initial a clause in there that states they will take on all legal ramifications for not having it there if they happen to get sued. And that is happening left and right. We believe that every brand in the market should have accessibility software deployed. With all that said, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, like I mentioned, I spent a lot of my career with some pretty notable brands where digital accessibility hadn't come up, and like I mentioned before, it's a massive audience. Up to 25% of your people engaging with your campaign are experiencing these difficulties. And they represent, I mean, if you put your marketer hat on or your CEO hat on, they represent a massive buying power. In America alone, it's a $20 billion buying power for those 25%. The other thing that people don't realize is those folks are incredibly loyal because because I think the last statistic I heard, it's some crazy number. It's like 3% of the internet is accessible. So the majority of these folks with disabilities, their experiences are all bad. So when they find a good experience, they're extremely loyal. So if you think of it from a lifetime value perspective, it's incredibly powerful. The other thing is the families of people with disabilities are also loyal because they have empathy for their family member. And so that buying power actually starts expanding into trillions,
Right.
which is pretty powerful. Now, the right thing to do is the next question is we should, as far as creating an inclusive web, the thing to consider with accessibility is software and AI only solve about 40% of the problems. And even the best, which AudioEye is the best at this, software can't solve the problem by itself. And you actually brought up a really important thing with your experience with your company is AI doesn't understand fully context.
Exactly.
And so to understand context, you need humans involved to guide that process. Technology and AI can expedite it and make it fast, but you need humans involved and experts involved to guide that process. And so, we believe the gold standard in accessibility is a three-pronged approach, which is AI oriented technology with expert humans to assist that technology. And then the third part is part of your software development lifecycle, including scanning and auditing in the development process. Those three pieces together will give you the best experience for people with disabilities. Now, the other benefit is when you do all that right, there's actually a lot of other benefits. It helps with SEO. It helps anything crawling and generating information from your website. It helps it do it more effectively. So not only do you get this benefit of solving for 25% of your audience, you actually benefit the other 75 as well to help them find you.
And to me, this is such a basic like compliance check mark that is not just on the shoulders of marketing, but it should be on the shoulders of operations and HR and finance and product. I mean, this is something that basic. Why aren't 3% of that's so low? Huge opportunity for you, by the way. But why aren't more companies deploying accessibility on sites?
Honestly, I think people believe it slows them down, and really it doesn't. When it becomes part of your process, when it becomes part of your campaign process, when it becomes part of your product development process, it actually doesn't slow us down. Like AudioEye, we release content to our website every single day, and it's all accessible. It doesn't slow us down because it's part of our process. My designers and creative director, they understand the principles, so they actually design in Figma with accessibility in mind. When that goes to our developer to build the landing page or the new page on the website or whatever it is, he has accessibility training and has understanding, and it becomes native to his process. So, and then also like our writers, even when they're preparing something, content, they're already including alt text and things like that to make all of the process fluid, and then we can deploy literally every single day.
I love that, and it's very, very important. We've talked about today just some real key points in areas that you feel a lot of marketers either need to know more, dive into more, or just might be doing wrong, and your insights will really help them kind of get on the rails, get the right train on the right rails. There's a metaphor in there someplace. So let's bring this all together and talk about one of your own campaigns that really created the engagements by using those insights through a lot of customer interactions and research, and then the deployment from a conversion standpoint.
Yeah.
Really well.
Yeah. So I'll go back to one of my experiences, which I failed to mention in the intro, Pluralsight. They were a company I started with when they were about 30 million in revenue. In 2 years, we grew that to 220 million. The thing that was amazing with that particular run was we did it profitably. We did it running at about a 10% EBITDA margin, and we were growing at about 115% CAGR, even with that profit. So usually when you're at that growth stage, it's like you're in the red. We had certain payment covenants that made it so that we had to do it profitably, but we found a way. And part of it was applying this process to campaign driven. So Pluralsight, every summer, we would experience a decent slump in our performance, specifically with our B2C segment. We had B2B and B2C, and we would experience a slump. And so what we did, our goal with this was to get rid of the slump, to actually keep our trajectory even through the summer. Our B2C side was a PLG motion. So we wanted to get them into trial, but also then move them into a paid offering. And we wanted it to be fun. We wanted it to be rewarding so that they would actually share it in social media and on LinkedIn, and actually drive the campaign further beyond, the initial reach. So that was the goal. And what we did to create a campaign around that was we decided to do summer camp. It felt right? It felt relevant with our slump being in the summer. It's like, how do you engage kids in summer to not go create mischief? You send them to summer camp and do something productive. And so part of summer camp was take courses from Pluralsight. So Pluralsight, if you're not familiar, is it's an ed tech company with training for software developers, IT professionals, and creative professionals at the time. I think they've actually stopped the creative side, but technology people. So they would complete learning courses, take quizzes, they would get and receive badges and share those badges. And, honestly, we had a really good outcome from this summer camp campaign. And it was something we engaged across the business. So we engaged the whole company from every department in marketing, product marketing, brand marketing, demand and creative. Sales even was engaged because a lot of our PLG motions will convert into enterprise customers. So they were engaged. Our product team and allowing us to actually change certain things in the product so that the experience, we could tell that story of summer camp all the way into product. And we had a really amazing outcome with everyone engaged in the campaign. We had more than 40,000 people engage in this campaign. Wow. 25% of those 40,000 were new customers, new to Pluralsight. We converted from trial to paid subscriptions higher than any effort in the past prior to that campaign. And like I mentioned, a lot of those PLG visitors ended up turning into enterprise businesses. So it took 2 or 3 quarters for that to occur, but we actually shot of adrenaline into the B2B pipeline, even though it was a B2C PLG motion campaign.
I love that. And what you did with this is change habit. So what were some of the elements of those behaviors that you found really interesting downstream that you could utilize in ongoing messaging or ongoing campaigns?
Yeah. So, a couple of easy ones was, people, at least that particular audience, they really liked taking quizzes and like demonstrating their knowledge. Like they gained knowledge and they like to share that they learned something.
That's cool.
Well, I guess I should say they like to validate that they learned something, and then they loved to share that. They love to share the badge from taking that course and learning it. And that's something that we were able to take into a lot of future activity is there's some shareability when people feel like as an individual they're elevating. And so we leaned into that quite a bit in future campaigns as well.
That's fantastic. We are at time. We're actually past time. We had a good conversation today. I love it. Before we leave, I've got 2 questions for you. The first one is we deployed a Better At series at the beginning of the year. And what we're focusing on with each guest that we bring on the podcast is what is a single Better At thing that you believe our listeners can take away from this show and deploy right away in their ongoing, curiosity and learning as they begin to build campaigns. We believe that the more we build audiences and build interest and build understanding about the right marketing strategy, marketers are just going to become better at many things that they do day in and day out. And that was kind of the idea behind this Better At series.
I love it. Yeah. 1% better every day, right? That's
exactly. It all adds up.
Yeah. I would say know your customer. And people are going to have different capacities to do that. If you're a small business, you're not going to be able to get out as often to talk to customers as, say an Adobe who has unlimited resources to do that and dozens, if not hundreds of people to do that. So if you can't do it, in Zoom or in person to talk to your customer and understand them, then I would say observe them digitally and understand their behavior. Worry less about the channels they're coming from. Actually watch what they're doing on your website. What ads are they engaging with? What content are they engaging with? What pattern are they doing? Are they going from A to B to C, or right from A to C? If you watch those patterns and you optimize to those patterns, you will see immediate success in what you do. When I do A/B testing and personalization, a standard A/B test might yield a 20, 30% lift in something. But if I actually watch their behavior and then tailor some minor personalization based on behavior, you're going to see 2, 3, 400% lift. And those little things, just understanding what people are doing and why they're doing it, will help you be a better marketer.
I absolutely love that. Thank you for that. What is the best way for our audience to get in contact with you?
Honestly, probably LinkedIn. If you just search Sollis, Sollis, you can also search Chubby Unicorn. That's my consulting business. That's a little easier to remember. But either one of those, you can hit me up on LinkedIn. I'd love to chat.
Well, I tell you, Chad, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you. And if you'd like to get in contact with me, you can email me, Lori@StrategyCast.com. Chad, thank you so much for your appearance on StrategyCast.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.